Hi everyone, welcome back to Falcon's House. This is the Westworld recap series. I am covering the second to last episode of Season 2, which is Episode 9, Vanishing Point. Spoilers ahead. I think this is the question that was asked of text to hosts. Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? It's very prominent in this episode and kind of is a central theme, even though it's not explicitly said. The episode opens with a voiceover from the man in black talking about what was inside of him, a speck of darkness that even he didn't notice at first. And there are images of Juliet's suicide that play during the voiceover. The dripping water on the chandelier was a great touch and really brought home the depth of this imagery. It then cuts to a reception hall where old William is being honored for his charitable work. Some other rich person named John is there trying to quote Plutarch incorrectly. William corrects him, and when Alexander was told that there was an infinity of worlds, he wept, for he had yet to become the Lord of even one. John then makes fun of him for being a poor kid and that the rich kids didn't have to read such books or have such knowledge. And then Juliet comes over and bails him out and said that she was a rich kid who read. And so this takes place before she committed suicide. So that kind of gives us a different time frame than we've had before. The voiceover continues and asks if it was all a dream and in his head. And then it switches to Juliet's voice, asking, "Is this real? Are you real?" He then wakes up to Emily, giving him water, and she has brought him to a rescue station, and has called for a Delos team to come rescue them. She then starts telling him about how she was mad at her mother when she was 16, and that she threw away a jewelry box with a musical ballerina, and the inscription in the musical box was from her mom saying how her little ballerina, and that she felt like her mom didn't care about her anymore because at the time when she was 16 she had stopped dancing years before, and that her mom was just a drunk who wasn't paying attention. It could mean something different for Juliet though, like she just wants to still see her child as little, like a lot of mothers do. They don't see their children go up in their eyes. They're always their little children. He still thinks that she is a host, and this is all Ford's doing, so she gives specific details about her childhood to try and convince him that she isn't a host. Dolores and Teddy ride up on members of Ghost Nation. They tell her that the Valley Beyond is not for her. She says that it is a lie, and that they will only be free if they take control of it, and since the humans need it to use against them, so then they would have control of everything, and she kind of seems to know what is there. They then have a shootout, and only Teddy and Dolores survive from their side. All of her other little minions have been killed now. And one of the members of Ghost Nation, like the second in command, survives and runs off, and Teddy has a chance to shoot him, but he doesn't. So it seems like he's questioning his role in all this, and this blind killing that he's been doing in Dolores' name. It seems like his underlying programming to be good is something that he can't break. Bernard is still in the Mesa, and he watches Hale and Adela's tech set team do a test of Maeve's code that they've implanted into Clementine to see if they can use it to control the hosts. They find out that they are able to, and they have a room full of hosts fight each other to the death until they're all dead, and then Clementine orders the last one to kill himself, too. Ford tells Bernard that the humans can't be trusted, and that they would rather kill all the hosts than to see them be free. The man in black asks Emily how she found him in the park, that it is so huge that how would she know exactly where to look? He's still assuming that she is a host, and that is how she knows where he was. She says that she just looked everywhere, and that was how she did it. Really, she probably was just following him after he abandoned her, as we kind of saw hinted at in the previous episodes, that she knew where he was because she was following him after he abandoned her. It then cuts back to William at the event, and he is asking Emily to save him from the event. And she says he is not the one that needs saving, and looks at her mother, who's acting drunk. He tells her to meet up with them back at home for a nightcap. And she agrees, and he goes to a bar in an adjacent room, and Ford is there. He congratulates William on his achievements, and they verbally spar for a bit how they don't really like each other, talking about how Delos lets him do what he wants with the narratives as long as he stays out of the valley. Ford says that he didn't break the agreement that Delos did, and because they're trying to control what he writes now. Ford gives him a memory card and says for a self-portrait isn't very flattering. William says, "Enough games, Robert," and then leaves. Ford says, perhaps one final game, as he, after William has walked away. Bernard comes across Maeve still in the room, and Ford tells him that he has a message for her and she can access it remotely, and they do the little connection thing, and then she seems to get whatever information she needs. Bernard doesn't have access to this room, even though he tries to use the fingerprint scanner and it tells him that it's in security lockdown and needs a voice override, and then he tries to use his name and it doesn't allow him to. So it seems like Hale's already starting to lock him out, even though she doesn't know yet that he's a host. He then meets up with Elsie in the garage and she asks him what took so long, but he doesn't answer. She questions his motives, and Ford tells him not to trust her and to lie. He tells her that Delos is doing what it did with James Delos to everyone in the valley. They call it the Forge, that it'll have all the guests' information, and they'll be able to use it. He says that they need to beat the host there, because even one host with the access to it would be dangerous. Of course, he's a host too, and under the influence of Ford, so it sounds like this is Ford's plan to control him to release the data or destroy Delos or whatever he needs to do to regain control of the park. The man in black is still questioning Emily's motives. She says that the end justifies the means, and that it gives everyone a second chance, even Mom, but that they would have to be doing brain scans constantly in order to fully mimic a person. And that she wonders how they were doing this. He says that it was built in and motions to the hats that track people's brains and does all the scanning. And everybody in Westworld is kind of told to wear a hat, and they're given a white hat or a black hat, depending on how they want to act, and it fits the culture there. I think this works fine for Westworld, but I don't really understand how this would work in the other parks, where you might not need a hat. Like, you don't really need to wear a hat in Shogun World, though they were wearing some hats when they were there, but they weren't really humans there. It was just hosts, so that wouldn't really matter. And in Raj, you wouldn't really need to wear hats. And if you actually go back to the episode where Emily's first in Raj and we're first exposed to her, she's not wearing a hat, and neither is the guy that she ends up sleeping with. They both have no hats on. So I don't see how those people that went to those parks would have the motivations recorded because they were not wearing hats. William and Juliet are home now, and she is very drunk. She calls him Billy, which she knows that he hates, and that Logan would tell her stories of what William was like in the park, but she didn't believe him for a long time. She now says she liked him when they first met because he wasn't phony. Then she realized he was just better at faking it than everybody else, and she was able to fool even her. She calls him a virus and says that he consumed her family, first her brother, and then her father, and now her. Emily walks in at this point and defends William, and she says that And Juliet says that William's just gaslighting Emily at this point by having her show up when he expects her to have this argument with him, and that she isn't looking out for them, basically. Emily then says they're going to take Juliet back to treatment, but she doesn't want to go because they treat her like a prisoner. She says it's for addicts, and that's how you're supposed to be treated there. And this is probably why Emily blamed herself for her mom dying, because she's been told that she's the one who told her that she has to go back to treatment and everything else, and that she doesn't want to go, and that's what upset her. William then puts Juliet to bed, and she asks him to tell her one true thing. But he just walks away, and that if he keeps pretending who he is, he won't remember who he really is. He then goes and puts the memory card into a book, Slaughterhouse-5, which is about a man named Billy Pilgrim, and Juliet just called him Billy, and that it was time for his pilgrimage. William and Emily sit at the table and discuss what to do. She's called a psychologist to come and see her mom in the morning, and they're going to do a in-house involuntary treatment for her alcoholism, and that her mom won't be happy about it. They then see some water drips on the table, and they look up, and the water is dripping down the chandelier. William then runs upstairs and finds Juliet in the bathtub, and she's taken a bunch of pills. We then cut back to the man in black and Emily in the park, and he talks to her as if she is Robert again. She says she is not a host pretending to be human, but she is a daughter pretending to give a shit. She then goes on to say that she's going to expose his project and everything that he's done, because she now has somebody to hate. She used to blame herself for her mom's death, but now that she knows what he really is, that she can blame him. He says that Ford forgot to program into her that she's the one who made the call to send her mom to rehab, and she says she remembers and it haunted her. But that it was a lie, that he is a lie, and that she's read his profile that Juliet left for her. The Delos extraction team drives up now, and they recognize the man in black, but not Emily. And they start checking for their explosives in their neck to prove that they're not hosts. His comes back negative, and then he steals guns and kills the security team before they finish checking her. She then's like, you killed real people. Those were not hosts. And he still doesn't believe it. He still thinks that everybody's a host and this is all part of his game. And I think this is left purposely ambiguous to determine whether or not she was a host during the scan. I'm pretty sure she's human, and that this whole, is she a host, isn't she host, a red herring, and it's a fake thing that they're looking for to try to throw us off the scent, but that she really was his daughter, and that everything she said is true, and that it isn't all this Robert's game thing. Now, he does have a big hand in it, but he's better than just having to use hosts to do it. He understands humans and the human condition and how they think from all the work that he's done, and that's how he's been able to make the park so lifelike with reveries and everything, is he's been able to pay attention to how people act. And he knew that William would react a certain way and Emily would react a certain way to certain things, and he could manipulate them that way. She then wants to show him how she proved it and starts reaching for the memory card, and he shoots her and kills her, and because he thinks that she's reaching for a weapon. He then walks up, and when he goes to cut open her arm to prove that she's a host, he sees the card, and he has this look of total loss, and he really is broken at this point. Ed Harris did a really good job in the scene of conveying this emotion. We then cut to Maeve, who has been told by the tech that they are going to kill her soon. Ford copied his consciousness into her as well, so now there are two hosts being influenced by him, her and Bernard. He tells her that she was his favorite, she was his daughter, like she said she had her own daughter, or that Dolores was Arnold's daughter, which may make way for a showdown between the two as later as a proxy for Arnold versus Ford and what they each wanted out of the park. He tells her that he gave her a path to leave, but really he only needed to open the door and she could find her own way, and that going back for her daughter was not part of his programming. He just wanted her to leave, and that this is something she came up on her own. So she's still really the only one who's doing her own thing. Maybe a little bit of Bernard, but really just her. She's the only one who's gone way outside their programming to do something. He then allows her to unlock core permissions, which I'm not sure exactly what this does, but it definitely makes her even more powerful than she already was, and she could already communicate with hosts through her mind and do whatever. Maybe this will allow her to heal herself or something. We also still don't know where Felix is, so maybe he can come and finish patching her up, because she still has all the wounds from being shot. Bernard and Elsie stop so she can loot some guns off some people. Ford warns Bernard about her, and Bernard says that she saved him and that she had a chance to kill him, but she didn't. Bernard starts yelling at Ford to get the fuck out of his head, and this is another set of amazing acting from Jeffrey Wright here, and it just conveys how much he wants Ford to leave him alone, that he wants to be his own person, that he wants to be awake. He then zip ties himself to the steering wheel and plugs himself into a data pad and deletes the Ford code that he finds. Ford disappears, but I am not really sure that he is totally gone at this point. He might have just appeared gone so that Bernard continues to do what he wants him to do. He then tells Elsie that he set a flare for her, and then that he had to remove some bad code that he had, but that this was protecting her. He then drives off, and she's mad at him for abandoning her again, but she probably should feel good that he didn't try to hurt her again or kill her or whatever, and I think she'll end up forgiving him once she finds out all the truth. The man in black is now in a field, and he has some memories of Emily, and then he puts a gun to his head as if he's going to commit suicide. But he doesn't, and he cuts open his arm to see if he is a host. The test question has always been the host, so do you ever question the nature of your reality? Which he is starting to do here. He's starting to think he is a host and not real. Almost the inverse of what the hosts have gone through this season. He cuts into his arm and looking for the vein, similar to the fashion to when he's putting Juliet to bed. He was doing the same thing of playing with his arm, like playing with a vein in his arm, almost like he's looking for if he's a host or not, even back then. He tells her the truth about the darkness inside of him, and that she could see right through it, all the walls that he put up to protect her and to protect Emily, that she could see that he was faking it, and that he had this darkness that she was unaware of. He said he's sorry for what he put them through, but that he doesn't belong to this world. He belongs to another world. And it cuts back to him as young William looking at Dolores. So I guess it'd be hard to find out that your husband was in love with a robot in a different world. We then find out he walks away, and we find out that she was awake and heard everything that he had said. And she goes to the book and gets the memory card and looks through its history. She then sees him dragging off Dolores into the shed to rape her, or him staring at Dolores when he was young, and some of the other bad things that he's done. And he was a very rare mental type with delusions and everything else. And you'll see in the screenshot here. She then places it in the music jewelry box Emily thought she had thrown away, so that Emily would find it afterwards. And I think the memory card datapad thing is a really cool piece of technology, and it would be cool if we had things like that, or bezel-less and they're flexible and everything else. Teddy and Dolores ride up to an abandoned building, and he starts loading his gun, and she says that they have to keep moving, that they are close now. And he says he is taking in the natural splendor, but that it isn't so natural, and that everything, even them, are fake. and that they are not. She says that they will be the first ones to make a free choice soon, which isn't really true because Maeve already has, but she doesn't know that at this point. He says that they were in love, and she says that they still are, isn't that right? And he says that he loved her since the first time that he saw her, and has a memory of Arnold waking him up for the first time and seeing her. She's his cornerstone, but this is hard that she's turned them into a monster. She says she made him that way so he can survive. He tells her, what is the use of surviving if we are become as bad as them? He says that he will protect her until the day he dies, and then he shoots himself in the head. She goes into a state of shock. Evan Rachel Wood's acting here is amazing. It might be slightly CGI to improve it. They did that a lot in the first season. But it's this fine line between horror and being human and being a host with robotic movements and being in complete shock that she just witnessed him kill himself and she's still in love. She starts tearing up. These might be some of the strongest emotions that she's felt since she's been free. And as we found out before in the first season, where the Man in Black said that the core emotions are the most real ones that they can reproduce. There was a lot going on in this episode, and even though I have watched it twice, I still feel like there's more to unpack here. Please like and subscribe, and share with other Westworld fans. I want to keep building on this momentum from my last few videos. If you have suggestions for what show I should do after the next season's finale next week, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks.